9th, year of 2022 meeting of the Citizen Review Board is now called to order. If you will, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I will now ask our meeting clerk, Ms. Tanya Wilcox, would you please conduct the roll call?
Banks. Collins.
Present.
Tamayo.
Present.
Reyes.
Present.
Guy. Akil.
Present.
Ingandela. Valdez.
Present.
Urban.
Let the record show that all members of the Citizen Review Board are present with the exception of Devin Ingandela, Ms. Irene Guy, Robert Urban, and Reverend Banks. At this time, I'll ask our Vice Chair, Colonel Reyes, to read the meeting guideline.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And good evening, everybody. Please silence all electronic devices. The duties and responsibilities of the Citizens Review Board are to review completed department investigations involving use of force in cases of importance and interest to the community or the city. Determine whether the disposition of reviewed cases was consistent with department policies and procedures. Review matters of importance or interest and make recommendations regarding the handling of these matters. Determine whether any revisions or additions to department policy and procedures are appropriate in reviewing matters of or importance or interest, and report findings and recommendations to the mayor and the chief of police. Cases that are brought before the Citizens Review Board are closed internal affairs cases that have been investigated and brought to the police chief for disposition. It is the Citizens Review Board's job to review the cases and to render an opinion as to whether the investigation was done according to department policies and procedures. The Citizens Review Board members are provided the investigative files in advance of the meeting. The Citizens Review Board will hear from the department whenever matters of interest or importance are requested for review by the board or the department. The coordinator for the board is Captain Patrick Mesmer. Any person who wishes to make a complaint concerning a matter which may be considered by the Professional Standards Bureau should see Captain Mesmer for information on how to file a complaint. And finally, the board should not discuss matters where the city or the department may likely be a party in litigation. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. We'll now move on to item 4, approval of the minutes from the meeting of October 25th, 2022. Are there any questions or provisions? Hearing none, I will need a motion and a second to approve the minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Board member Lincoln Tamayo has made a motion to approve the minutes of the Tuesday, October 25th, 2022 meeting. Board member Colonel Reyes has seconded the motion of approval of the minutes for the Tuesday, October 25th, 2022 meeting. Any further discussion needed? We'll now continue with the vote. All those in favor, please show by raise of hand. Any opposed, please show by raise of hand. The motion passes. Thank you. Okay, if you will, Dr. Collins.
I just wanted to, and I didn't want to question the minutes, but on Roman numeral 7, when we had them, I know the minutes are recorded, the records are recorded, but we did ask for some consideration with the timeline, the changes with the interview process that was going to be changed, and the minutes just indicate that we had a discussion. I would like to hope that when that change is finally made, it was an initial, that they would be a little bit more specific in considering some of the things we said. There's nothing wrong with the minutes, they are fine, and that's why I didn't want to question them, but it fails to indicate that we did ask for some consideration as they make the changes, and that's why they came before us, but it just says discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Collins.
Thank you.
We'll continue with the agenda. Item 5, public comment. As I call your name, Those who have signed for the public comment portion of this agenda, please approach the podium, state your name, state your address for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. If you will, Simon Rowe.
Good evening. My name is Simon Rowe. I live at 9606 North 12th Street. Sorry. I just had like two, comments to bring up to the CRB. One thing, I noticed there was an annual report on the website for the Tampa Police for TBD from 2019. I didn't know if this was something like the board itself could address, but I didn't know if there was one for 2020 or 2021. If that could be publicly available, that would be great. So we can, as the public, know what's going on. And another thing, I don't know how exactly to address this, but I think the agendas are great, but honestly, it's kind of hard to find details looking up the cases because, they're purposefully short. If we could get like a copy of like a redacted investigative report before the meeting so we can know more about the case being discussed, because it's hard to even find out like the date from the agenda so people can come in and get a better idea of what's being discussed, so we can also have better public comments. It's hard to participate when we don't know much about the cases even being discussed. But yeah, just other suggestions for how to get the public more involved and like have our own opinions on what is happening with TBD. And basically I also want that for the CRB itself. So I know you all get copies of like the investigative reports. Basically want to make sure you have all the tools for you to form your own opinions. I would love if that could also apply to the public. But yeah, just a couple suggestions. I also will support the upcoming measure to put independent counsel on the ballot for the CRB, and that's also part of it, but that's a bit out of the scope of this. Basically, we'd love to, participate more. I'd love to get more people out here in public comment and really have all the tools they need to participate and form our own opinions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next for public comment, Abdel Hadir.
Hi, good evening. I just wanted to very briefly say and stand in support of the upcoming vote on independent counsel for the CRB, because as it stands, the attorney that represents the CRB also represents the mayor's office, which could be a conflict of interest. And just as the CRB made a recommendation or voted in favor of letting the people vote on this, I would like to urge the CRB to also take a stand on it and urge the people to vote for it, and so we can have an independent attorney for the CRB. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the,
I think there's one more person, she didn't sign it.
okay, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Sandra Zickery. My address is 11248 Paddock Manor Drive, Riverview, Florida. Before I begin, I would like to request additional minutes because I do have the interest of the chief in regards to this case, and I would like to present evidence. It is slightly extensive, but I will try my best to conclude as soon as possible.
Please continue.
Okay. Hello, this is in reference case number 20C-164. I am here once more to address my concerns that has been ongoing for a few years now and address the various concerns I have that occurred from the last time we spoke, which was in July 2021 until now. Just recently, I was protesting against the Tampa police at the Night Out event, and I had a female officer approaching me, asking me why I did not address my concerns with her and asking if I knew who she was. I did not. Apparently, it was the chief of police. She gave me her card, took my number, and informed me to give her a chance. We spoke recently. I requested to meet in person with all the detectives involved, and she stated she will have her executive officer to do a preliminary review to have an idea on what the issues are. With this information, I respectfully request for anyone in these proceedings to please support me to the fullest. My first issue is that the last we spoke, I am informed of gathering several expert affidavits and reports, of which I do have now. Thus includes 2 forgery analysis, and 2 reports from 2 anesthesiologists. The forgery reports entails that the nurse of St. Joseph Women's Hospital has forged several of my consent forms, signed off as a doctor, and forged forms days before I even give birth. Briefly, I want to first address the forgery aspect first. Internal Affairs stated for me to submit these affidavits of fraud to the detectives assigned to the case. They stated that they are aware of the delayed discovery doctrines in regards to the fraud. I met with the detectives in person with the reports, which was in 2021. He admitted not to having any knowledge of the delayed discovery doctrine, which is highly prejudiced to me because these detectives continuously try to use the statute of limitations against me in regards to the fraud. He took down the contact information of the forgery experts, the numbers of the attorneys that assisted me in my case, the numbers of the FBI offices that stated they're willing to help the Tampa police, the numbers of the chief of investigations in Polk and Hillsborough County, whom stated they were also willing to assist in any way. The detective stated they will call them and I could come back to talk. Previously in these public meetings, I have showed footages of Tampa police officers screaming at me, stating they will trespass me if I don't leave because they are refusing for me to file additional charges of battery, assault, aggravated battery and assault, and attempted murder. One of the officers refused to give me her badge number, which is actually a federal violation. The conversation lasted about an hour or so at the headquarters. The detective stated he will allow me to file those additional charges and instructed me to go to a certain district office. That district office called the detective and allowed me to proceed to file those additional charges with a separate case number. He informed me that the previous chief of police, the mayor, and the department has held various meetings about this case in the past. I did not bring any evidence because I did not know I was supposed to, and that case, in regards to the battery, was closed. I later attempted to forward evidence and still nothing was done. It was not attached, the evidence that I attempted to forward. There was no formal investigation. It was not submitted to any detective for review or anything. At that time, which was in 2021, I sent a message to Internal Affairs about this. They responded that they've reviewed all of my concerns and closed the thread. This morning, I visited the same issue with Internal Affairs. I sent them a message with the attachment of this letter I am reading now, and they stated that they will, sorry, I'm so sorry.
If you will, if you can draw to some type of conclusion, be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, sorry. I referenced the Internal Affairs case number and I referenced the police report case number. I further explained that if they did indeed review all of my complaints, then there will be a separate Internal Affairs case number because the assault and battery case has a separate police report number. Then the fraud case, they responded that they will forward my concerns to the commander of the criminal investigations. Continuing on in the events that occurred in 2021, an altercation occurred between myself and the detective. He was upset that I told the doctor's attorneys about the police investigation, which is public record, and informed me that he's not going to call any of the numbers I provided. He's not going to engage in any investigation because he doesn't feel like it, and referred me to the Attorney General in regards to my concerns about the fraud and potential Medicaid fraud that I brought up. I would like to state that it is inappropriate for police to get mad at me and then refuse to investigate a crime off of something extremely petty. My rights are being deprived from me, as well as my rights to proper due process. For whatever reason, the detectives are reluctant to documenting the forgery reports in their police case. There is clear evidence of fraud. These officers are refusing to document that a clear crime occurred. The Attorney General's office opened an initial review of my complaints of Medicaid fraud because I did not consent to the anesthesia or artificial rupture of my membranes, and the nurse that forged that paperwork, which would constitute insurance fraud for a provider to obtain funds on a non-consensual or medically unnecessary procedure, as well as my concerns about the overdose of anesthesia, as it may contribute to child abuse or some criminal act because I was pregnant. They have a jurisdiction to enforce such. The Tampa Police has basic jurisdiction to prosecute regular insurance fraud. They both have a statute of limitations of 5 years with an exception of the delayed discovery. I'm sorry, I have a lot
Yes.
more.
And if you will, some of the information you have shared with us on prior engagement, is there anything new developments that you wish to share with us at this time?
Yeah.
We're all a little familiar with the case, and on the agenda, board members will have the opportunity to engage in any questions or statements at that time. So if you will, you can draw to a conclusion.
Okay. Okay. The Attorney General concluded with the investigation, and they talked to the detectives and stated that the overdose of anesthesia was an accident, and they have no proof that I did not want the anesthesia. Let's formally dive into the experts' reports that I have from my 2 anesthesiologists. You've never seen the forgery reports, and you did not see the anesthesiologist reports either. Sorry.
Do you have a case number, a closed case number to share with the board?
Yeah. I'm sorry, my eyes are just bothering me a little bit. It's 20C-164, but I have pages I really want to read, and I state it's extensive, but it's evidence, and it involves the affidavits and the reports.
If you have copies, you can leave it with one of our legal counsel.
Okay.
And they can share it with the board.
I could leave this here then, if you like. I already have a copy at home, but it includes, I really want to read it, honestly. It's up to you.
I've extended the 3-minute courtesy. At this point, we do have an agenda to follow. So if you will, if you was to leave that material, I'm sure that board members will be able to review it in reference to the law enforcement. It seems to me, and again, I don't want to skip over the agenda, but it seems to me that there's health issues, and I'm having a challenge to determine in reference to the law enforcement side of your concern. So that's why I asked for a closed case number, so we can look into that particular complaint.
So, again, the issue is okay,
But if you will, just leave the material that you have, and board members will have the opportunity to review it.
how can I follow up and actually really formally talk about this in more detail? Because the chief of police is, she's allowing me to sit down and speak with her, and I would like support because, this is getting really serious.
Well, that's a great opportunity for you to have the opportunity to sit down with the chief. Obviously, she shared with you her concern, and for her to take the time out and actually hear your concern. I think that's a great start. I think that works in your favor, and I'd be interested in hearing more from the chief as this develops.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Yeah. Thank you so much.
I will now ask whether there were any recorded comments received through the voicemail of 813-274-7340 for this meeting.
No. No, Mr. Chair.
And were there any written comments?
No.
That would conclude the public comment portion of our meeting. Thank you for our participants today. We'll now continue with item 6, allowing staff and board response to public comment. At this time, we'll open the floor to our board members for if they had any question or statement or commentary from the public comment heard today.
I have two.
Dr. Collins,
The first one is to Mrs. Rowe, I think it was.
Simon Rowe.
Was it Mrs. Rowe who asked about the minutes of the meeting, was making a suggestion to enhance the meeting? It wasn't quite clear to me, and so I wanted to ask staff, isn't the cases that we're going to review online?
So Dr. Collins, again, Captain Patrick Messmer, Professional Standards Bureau. The agenda is online, which does have the case number. Any citizen can make a public records request to the department to get the same documents that you get for the meeting, if they would like to. But they would be charged accordingly pursuant to Chapter 119 for those documents.
And what I'm trying to, and thanks so much, because I thought they were available to them, but if they request them, then they can get it. They need to actually pay for it. So if, and this is to the question that was being asked by Ms. Rowe, I'm assuming that if you really wanted more detail on the case prior to coming, that you could request that, that case. Are you aware of that? And you don't have to answer me, but the question is, if you're aware of that, then would you still want to have a detail? And that's the kind of question I'm asking. Are we still having a community citizen who wants more information? And I would say follow up with us and let us know that. And then the last case, is this a closed case? Is this a case that will come before us, and should we not be discussing it because it is still an active case? I heard you saying, is it closed? And we had a case number. Have that case come before us, or if this is one, once it is completed, it will then come before the Citizen Review Board?
Yes, I made notation of the case number. That's why I asked. I have not seen this particular case. I have been eyeballing for this particular case. I'm not sure if it's closed in its entirety. It seems to be an ongoing investigation. But if you will, Captain Messmer, in reference to the case just heard by the public comment, I don't have her name on the sign-in sheet.
Sure. The case, as you will see, the number that was given was a C number.
Yes.
That corresponds with the complaints that come in. So this was not a formal internal affairs case. This was reviewed as a complaint. It was addressed with the supervisors and the commanders of that division, and it was very clear by the initial inquiry into the complaint that there were no policy violations. So there was no internal affairs case opened in 2020 or in 2021. And there is no new information that was provided today that was not previously provided to the department in either 2020 or 2021.
Thank you, Captain Messmer.
Thanks.
Any other commentary from the board in reference to the public comment we received here today? They did raise one eyebrow in reference to Abdel Hadir, I believe, made the comment that the CRB annual report was displayed on the website of 2019, but not 2020 or 2021. Excuse me, Simon Rowe.
Yes, sir. I believe I don't know if it was specific to the CRB's annual report, and I'm not sure where that is posted, or if it was the police department's annual report. I know there have been some issues with changes to the website. I did go on the Tampa Gov website and just type in Tampa Police Annual Report, and the 2020 report did come up. You have to search for it, though. There is a report in 2021. There's one done every year, so I can work with our Public Information Office to figure out why it's not visible on the website. But there is one. There was one published in 2020 and in 2021.
Captain Messer, that's for the TPD's annual report. The annual report that we have submitted, and then it was requested with the city council that we do one, and we indicated we already was doing an annual report. That is a separate report of CRB's, and is that report online?
Ms. Pettis-Mackle may be able to answer that.
Thank you.
Maria Pettis-Mackle from the legal department. I will make sure that it is posted on the website, the annual report on the CRB website.
Yes, I am aware that we're making some changes in reference to the website, but I think moving forward, it'd be great to hear from board members in reference to, do we have any ideas of what we'd like to see displayed on that particular website, as far as tabs or things of that nature. So that may be something City Council can look into and reach out to the board members as they update the current website, so we can also share our insight in reference to whatever suggestions that we may have.
Thanks.
Well, now we'll continue with the agenda with item 7, items to be reviewed. Tonight, we're reviewing case number 21F-007.
Good evening, Board. Captain Jason Delahaye, Special Operations Bureau. How are you?
Greetings.
I'm here to speak on this, on the Internal Affairs Unit complaint 21F-007. It involved Master Police Officer Michael Braband. We were notified of a possible policy violation by a patrol sergeant on June 22nd, 2021. And the letter indicated that Master Police Officer Michael Braband failed to investigate a subject that was suspected of driving under the influence. And subsequently, an internal affairs investigation was conducted. On the case in point is on June 21st at 3:16 hours, officers were dispatched to 2199 West Bush Boulevard regarding a possible intoxicated subject passed out behind the wheel of a vehicle. 2 patrol officers arrived on scene. Both of them activated their body-worn cameras prior to arrival. And on the body-worn cameras, you can see a male subject passed out in the driver's seat of a vehicle. During the interaction with him, it appears he was impaired. He wasn't understanding questions, directions. His eyes looked bloodshot, glassy. There was also an open beer bottle in the cup holder of the center console that was partially full. Master Police Officer Braband was dispatched at 3:27 hours to conduct a DUI investigation, as that's his duties as part of a member of the DUI squad. As he was responding to the location, a message was sent by dispatch advising that all of the computer systems were going to be going down between 0400 and 0600. He then reached out to dispatch to ascertain which systems were going down, if it was just particular ones or the whole thing, and was told that the entire system was going down. He arrived on scene and one of the officers walked over to him to see if any of the vehicles needed to be moved for the investigation. At that time, it can be heard on body cam, he immediately told the officer that he was not going to arrest the individual no matter how intoxicated he is due to the system going down, and it would be an absolute cluster. The officer indicated that they could do it all handwritten because he had all the forms, and Master Police Officer Braband responded, yeah, I got the forms too. I'm not going to be doing a handwritten CRA, a handwritten citation, a handwritten report. That's just too much. Master Police Officer Braband then approached the other officers at the scene and told them that he wasn't going to do the investigation due to the computer systems going down. In the review of the interviews of all 3 patrol officers' statements, they were all consistent with what was on body cam, and they all turned their cameras off at certain points by policy to speak with supervisors or speak with each other about matters going on. Outcome of the incident was that someone was called to take possession of the vehicle and take the subject home. At no time during the event did Master Police Officer Braband turn on his body-worn camera. During his interview, he didn't deny any of the events in the call, and he said that the reason he didn't conduct the investigation was due to the computers going down, which he believed would make him unable to do any of the appropriate paperwork. He said he called his corporal while still on the scene, and his corporal didn't appear to have any objection to his reasoning, nor did he give him any alternatives on how to handle the call. And he also said he was unaware if any handwritten citations or DUI citations were even available to him. He said he gave the officers on scene alternatives to handle the call other ways, and when asked why he didn't activate his body-worn camera, he said that the camera SOP is written to encompass the whole department, so activating his camera prior to the arrival on scene is more important for patrol officers and not necessary for his position. I reviewed everything in the case, and I found that Master Police Officer Braband failed to activate his body-worn camera prior to his arrival on call. And though he volunteered for the call and there were mitigating factors that contributed to his decision, he failed to conduct a roadside field sobriety test of a suspected DUI offender, as are his duties as a member of the DUI squad. He was inattentive to his duties by not competently investigating the suspected offense. I found that the complaints of Manual of Regulations 1204, attentiveness to duty, I recommended those be sustained, and Manual of Regulations 1807, failure to comply with departmental policies, to wit, functions of the Special Operations Division and body-worn camera equipment was also sustained.
Thank you, Captain. Now open the floor to our board members that may have any questioning.
Captain, I just want to set the context here. This individual was found slumped at the wheel.
He was passed out behind the wheel of his car.
And this was not a neighborhood street. This was Bush Boulevard,
Yes, it was, sir.
at a major intersection on Bush Boulevard.
2199 Bush Boulevard area.
My understanding from the evidence here is that there were forms available for the DUI investigation to proceed without computers.
Yes.
And would it not be expected that and Officer Braband is a DUI officer,
He was at the time, yes, sir.
that he would conduct his duty? So knowing that the computer system is not working or is about to go under, that his duty would be finding someone slumped, passed out at the wheel on Bush Boulevard, bracketed by police cars to make sure that he can no longer travel, that it would be his duty, his sworn responsibility to conduct an investigation using the forms that were available.
Yes.
And then what happened to this driver? They actually called someone, called a taxi
They called somebody to come pick him up and
to
and
come
the
pick
vehicle.
him up and to take the car that this person who was not even barely conscious, not even conscious, to take that person's car back to that person's house along with that person?
Yes, sir.
And what was the disposition of this case?
It was all sustained.
It all
Everything
sustained,
was
but,
sustained.
and then the consequences was a letter
A letter of counseling.
of counseling. I am just absolutely stunned that was the disposition of this case, that, and a DUI officer, that's his duty, would allow, well, let me ask also, the three other officers, and there were probably more officers on hand, if Officer Braband refused to perform his duty, could any one of those 3 or 4 or 5 officers at the scene have conducted their own DUI investigation?
All officers are trained in the academy to conduct DUI investigations. When you're a patrol officer and you call a DUI officer, it's similar to the cases being transferred to them. There's very specific legal legalese in DUI offenses and specific ways things have to be done. It's not out of the realm of possibility for the patrol officer to do that. However, they were relying on the expertise of Officer Braband, and he failed to do his job.
But would a patrol officer have the authority, seeing that?
Yes.
That,
Yes.
to conduct on their
Yes.
own? And to bypass that authority,
They,
which was being
they,
misused,
any cop
grossly
can,
misused at the time.
they can conduct a DUI investigation.
Officer Braband had also said that he had suggested that they arrest him for driving without a valid driver's license.
Yes, sir.
So not only was this gentleman so impaired that he was unconscious at the wheel, the officers also knew that he was driving without a valid driver's license.
Per Officer Braband's statements, yes.
So it just begs the question, why wasn't he arrested on the spot for driving without a valid driver's license?
So generally on those type of criminal traffic cases, we issue criminal citations and don't take subjects to jail.
Okay.
On those, we issue criminal citations and basically release them at the scenes like a
Okay, so criminal
recog.
citation was,
Would have been no valid driver's license.
and that was issued?
No, it wasn't. I said that's what we can do. We don't normally arrest people and take them to jail for that offense.
So when this gentleman was brought home to sleep it off, and his car was driven over to his house as well, nothing happened, there was no follow-up?
No,
So
sir.
this gentleman without a valid driver's license could have been driving on Bush Boulevard or Fowler or Fletcher the next night, and we had not a care in the world, just off he went. Do we even know this guy's name?
I don't have that in front of me, sir.
So he's free and clear.
I don't know where he's at right now, sir. That night, I can tell you he did not go to jail.
Okay, I don't have any more questions.
Thank you, Mr. Tamayo. If you would, Dr. Collins.
Oh, wait.
I know, I'll follow, because I like
Oh, okay.
Okay, you will. Colonel Reyes.
Okay. Good evening. Officer Braband's statement was pretty long. It's pretty lengthy, and it was pretty technical. I was trying to make sense out of it. I was trying to understand what he was saying in mitigation, because everything he was saying was in mitigation, rationalizing his behavior. Just a couple questions for you, for my edification. So he talked a bit about the tracks and CRAs. And, you know, in my non-police mind, I was trying to make sense out of this, but it appeared that he was trying to say that because the system went down, he couldn't write the report because of I guess the relationship of the tracks and the CRAs that are required for a complete investigation. And if I got that wrong, please tell me. But when I was reading this, it sounded like he was saying, hey, look, the system's down. In the system are these two reports, I guess, tracks and CRAs. I can't access it, so therefore I can't do the report.
We still have paper citations, paper CRAs.
Okay.
We're not just, everything's done online, obviously electronically nowadays for the most
Right.
part. But there are backups in having paper citations, paper CRAs. Just because a computer system goes down doesn't mean that we stop.
So then that leads to my second question. Forgive me, I'm trying to articulate as best as I can. But there was something in his very lengthy testimony where he was talking about, again, because the system was down, it affected his ability to categorize what kind of offense this was. Was this a DUI, or was this, I guess, just a regular traffic citation or a regular moving violation? I can't remember the exact term, but because of that, again, that stopped him from doing what he was.
The system being down would not have stopped him from performing his duties.
Okay, and then finally, the time factor involved. Because in his statement later on, he said, if I knew now, you know, what I should have known earlier, time-wise, then yeah, I probably could have done the report. But given the totality of the circumstances, given all that's what's happened, it was my judgment that it was not possible to do what he was supposed to do. I mean, what's your your thoughts on that?
I found him in violation of everything on here, because he might not have been able to handwrite the formal report between 0400 and 0600.
Right.
All he needs for the arrest is the DUI portion, so the criminal report affidavit, the citations, things like that. That's all he needs. We have those in paper form. They're everywhere. I still have a DUI citation book in my trunk, and I haven't been on the street in a long time. So that was not an acceptable excuse for why. In his mind, he might have thought, well, I can't do this, but there's backups. There's paper citations. He could have gone on later or the start of his next shift and did the actual report itself. There was other alternatives that were way more viable than not investigating this offense.
And then one last comment and observation. So when I reviewed the IDP 500 and the MORs, they're pretty black and white. Thou shalt do the following. I guess my question is, and it really goes to his argument, and that is, in this case, you have a police officer with 27 years, so he's not a rookie. He's been around the block. He's a pretty experienced guy. Where in your policies is it express or implicit, that an officer in certain situations may have a certain level of discretionary authority or judgment? Or
We do have discretion in things that we do. We do. However, for his specific position, the IDB 500 is, I think, what you're referring to, which is the Special Operations Division. It breaks down all the different units and stuff, and what you're expected. That specific one, number 2, says conduct roadside field sobriety tests of all suspected DUI offenders. There's no leeway in that to me.
Okay.
So that he should have went there and he should have done his job, and he did not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Reyes. You will, Dr. Collins.
2 questions and a statement. One is, it appears to me, and it's fresh because I just found the case and read it, he could not do a sobriety test with this individual if that individual was that slumped over and couldn't even get out.
That's not necessarily true. A lot of times we can, once you wake them or get them up, they're able to get out of the car and try and do field sobriety.
Okay, so that
Real
eliminates.
quick, Dr. Collins, let me jump in on that. You didn't have the ability to watch the body camera video in this case, but he was woken up by the fire department when the fire department got there, and he was talking with the officers. So he was not just completely unconscious the whole time. If that was the case, and he was unconscious the whole time, the fire department would have taken him to the hospital if he was in an unresponsive state.
That helped that question. My second question is, he's early on said he refused to do the paperwork. I think when you were doing it, he said, I'm not doing all that paperwork, computer going down, et cetera. And then later, did I hear you say that he came back and said, I didn't know we have paperwork?
That's what he said during his investigation, during his statement, yes.
So that was.
He didn't know if they were available to him, I believe, was what he said.
And then my last question was, even in closing, it says the letter intend to reinforce your obligation to adherence to all department policies and regulations. Furthermore, you're hereby placed on notice that any further violations which are similar in nature may result in progressive discipline. Is the letter that he received a must first step? And you indicated that he was with DUI, a DUI officer.
The level
and
of
he's not there
discipline is
anymore.
determined by the chief of police in those instances, and they go off of, you can have one violation, you can have the same MOR violation where the range of discipline of officers can go all the way up to termination or training. So it's determined by the chief of police.
And this was, and I looked at the case, this was a June,
It's a 2021 case.
June 2021?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to also go over a little bit, he does not have any discipline history with anything similar. So the only discipline he's received, I believe, was being late or missing an off-duty job or being involved in a traffic crash early in his career. So this was the first time that he's received any kind of discipline for attentiveness to duty. And like we've discussed in the past, it does get based on the severity of the offense. In this case, there was no actual victim. And now, if the guy had gone back out and gotten in his car and killed somebody, I would think the discipline would have been much, much higher. But in this case, there wasn't an actual victim, and he didn't have any prior history of this, so that is probably why the chief and the executive staff went with a letter of counseling in this case, because it is progressive and it's based on the way that discipline is normally done.
What is the next step after the letter?
It would be a written reprimand for the next similar offense, but again, if the offense is the same violation, but the circumstances, involved something more egregious, like a person being injured because of the actions, or, a victim not receiving appropriate treatment or something along those lines, it could be definitely higher than a written reprimand. But a written reprimand would be the next step.
And so my last question off of that is, he received a letter, and you gave a good example, but if identical same thing occurred again, and it indicated in here that it would be a progressive disciplinary action, then that may have been the written reprimand.
Or a suspension, depending on the specifics of the circumstance.
Okay. And I ask all that just because I just think that the letter wasn't strong enough, even though you're indicating this was his first disciplinary action, but he was extremely negligent, it appears, by just saying, no, I'm not gonna do this, no, I'm not gonna do that. And I wouldn't agree with the actions that were taken.
Thank you, Dr. Collins. I have a concern, and I'm sorry. No, continue. Carlos Valdez.
I think we all agree and share the same frustration with the level of disciplinary that this individual received. It almost seems like it's the culture so much of like, okay, if you do something you're not supposed to do, you'll just get like a slap in the wrist, and it just keeps going and going and going. We had not so long ago another case that we were talking about and discussing, and we talked about the disciplinary measure where we brought up the disciplinary matrix process and model. So I would like to see a little bit more of accountability as it relates more toward cases like this. I mean, we're dealing with something that could have been, deadly, not just to him, but to any other individual out in the community if that person were to be driving at reckless ways or whatnot. So I hear the frustration from the board, and I share the same frustration with you all. Is this officer still involved with the department? Is he still hired?
He's still a police officer with the department. He's not on the DUI squad.
Has he had any other type of disciplinary issues that we can?
Not other than what I mentioned to Dr. Collins. He hasn't had any discipline since this. And his only discipline was very minor in nature for completely unrelated things years ago.
Was Officer Braband removed immediately from the DUI squad after this case?
He was removed shortly after this case was over.
And the other officers involved in the case, were they involved in any type of disciplinary matter? We did hear today that they were able to do and conduct a DUI investigation, and that didn't happen.
No, they were not made subjects in this investigation, and the reason for that was because they turned the investigation over to an expert, and the expert told them that it couldn't be done. And they don't have any reason to doubt what that DUI expert, that is his job, is to go out every night, and he's very familiar with the paperwork and the processes, and he went into it with them. The computers are going down, just like he said in his statement. He told the officers the same things. They don't do DUIs, so they are using his opinion as an expert, and they're relying on that, so they were not made subjects because of that.
Thank you. No further questions.
I know you mentioned earlier in the situation with computers going down, there's a backup system. My question is, on this particular day, we're aware of this particular incident, but my concern is what other incidents could have played out where others were aware of the system going down and took the same type of attitude. And before you answer that question, this system going down, was this a scheduled format? Because he seemed like he was aware it wasn't down prior to the stop, but he was aware that it was getting ready to go down.
Dispatch sent a notification out to all officers on their MDT, their computer in their car, to make them aware that the system was going down between those hours. That happens depending, it's not always the whole system, sometimes it could just be the system where we run driver's license or tags, and they let us know there's a downtime notification thing that they send out to us.
And when the system goes down, what other tasks could be affected? Does dispatch get affected? Does radio communication get affected? What other
They can
effects
still
could
answer
take
their,
place
they
from
can still
system
answer their
going down?
calls, and they can, if it would have affected, if the whole internet was going down, it would have affected dispatch, but then you go back to voicing all calls.
Okay,
Which-
so there's backup systems
Yeah.
in every scenario.
Yes.
All right, that's good to hear.
One nice question. When did Officer Braband leave this division?
I believe it was the end of 2021, beginning of 2022, I believe. Did you?
Thank you.
My other concern is we had several presentations on the BWCs, but for our people and viewers at home, I just want to get clarification on the difference in the different BWC audio and video footage from the officers that was there. Our officers typically, in my understanding, if an officer get dispatched to a particular incident, the BWC is automatically activated. Is that correct?
It's activated by the officer, or specific situations would, say he turns the lights on in the car, it would be activated. Someone in his vicinity or him pulls out their firearm, or I think taser also, it would automatically activate. But if you're just going to a regular call, prior to getting to the call, you're supposed to turn your body worn camera on.
So that responsibility will fall in the hands of the officer
Yes.
to turn on their body
Yes.
worn camera. And to continue to keep it powered on to not only protective of the officer, but in reference to investigations and things of that nature as well. So that's a capability that every officer has in reference to their own discretion to make the decision on to when and
We have
how long
discretion. We have discretion in
to turn on their
job.
BWC.
Not the BWC. There's a policy, very in-depth policy
Right,
about
so-
when to turn it on and when not
and
to.
that-
Prior to arriving at this call, his body worn camera should have been on.
Should have been on. And that was the policy of the 609.9 body worn camera equipment sustained. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for the captain? Any other statements? Well, I selected this case to bring awareness as we enter the holiday season. Just to share a few facts. You know, New Year's Eve is the biggest night for DUIs in the United States. Surprisingly, the chance of getting a DUI is 129% higher than the average. So I just want to raise the concern as we move into the holiday season, especially during New Year's Eve, that we ensure that we share the importance throughout the department of the importance of families out there traveling on the road. One other fact I'll share as well, 25% of car crashes, fatalities involve alcohol. The number raises to 33% during the holiday season. So again, that was one of the one of the reasons why I selected this particular case for this particular time of the year, to just bring awareness to the importance of the responsibilities of our officers out there in the field. Thank you, Captain. The chair is open to a motion on whether we concur or not concur or unable to reach a determination regarding the disposition of the case and its findings. Can I have a motion?
I make a motion if no one else will. I do not concur with the disposition of this case. I make a motion that we should not concur with the disposition.
Carolyn Collins has made a motion in reference to not concurring with the disposition of the case.
Let's be clear on this. So you're saying that we do not concur with the captain's findings to sustain all three violations of the,
I agree with the captain's finding to sustain them, but in lieu of the fact that this was a June 21 case, it was signed off at final disposition in September 2021. The officer stayed there to the 2021, and he had not assumed what looked to be about 4 failures in the case. And so I agree that they sustained them, and I know what we're supposed to be doing with that, but I can't agree with the disposition that, well, I would say the punishment or whatever that was affixed. And I know we're supposed to be saying disposition, but I wanted to get that out before, because I agree that they should have been sustained. I do not agree that what went along with it. And if we could send this back to whoever made that decision and ask them to bring it back. I know we've done a couple of them like that before.
the decision is made at the chief's office.
So if we go back to
Yes,
the
sir.
chief.
So, Mr. Chair, as a point of clarification, just so that I understand the motion, it's a question, we are able to, in the motion, to basically do a split. We can concur with the finding, but not concur with the disposition.
That's correct.
Okay, got it.
And just to be clear too, this case, remember, we have 180 days from the day the complaint is made to serve the discipline. So there is no way that this discipline can be changed. The discipline is what it is. So you cannot concur with the discipline that he was given, but it cannot be sent back and changed.
Mr. Chair, if I may comment. So Captain
Yes,
Mesmer,
well.
though, but continuing on with this discussion, this is still capturing the recommendations of the board. It's on the record, and it would still be relayed to the chain of command.
It'll absolutely be relayed to the chief, but the discipline is based on when the case was, the fact it's already been
Understand.
served under the statute and the collective bargaining agreement. It
Sure.
cannot be changed at this time.
I understand.
And for that, I understand it, and I don't mind bifurcating what we decide, but what we kind of stated. Sustain, agree with. The punish or disposition that was given as a result of it, I disagree with it. And that's the motion.
And I'll
If
second
it's
that,
not-
yeah.
Okay. And we can send this back, and I think it sends a message to the chief that this perhaps should have been a little bit more stringent, a written reprimand or something like that, so then in the future, because certainly where we are now in 2022, in the 6 months, there's no way that nothing can be done. But because nothing can be done, I still don't feel we need to agree.
So just for clarity, the motion on the floor is in reference to the findings and the findings and the violations sustained. However, there's a disagreement in reference to the disposition or punishment, if you will. That's the motion that's on the floor. The motion was made by Carolyn Collins, and the motion was seconded by Carlos Valdez. Any further discussion? We'll now continue with the vote. All,
Who seconded the motion, I'm sorry?
Carlos Valdez. We'll now continue with the vote. All in favor, please show by raise of hand. All opposed, please show by raise of hand. That motion passes. Full count. Continuing with the agenda, under item 8, Community and Tampa Police Department matters. Upon request, tonight, we have an overview by Captain Jason DeLaha of the Reserve Program, if you will. Thank you for fulfilling the board request and being here tonight. If you will, go ahead and proceed, please.
Welcome. So the Tampa Police Department currently has approximately 111 Reserve Force officers, 15 of those being Tampa Fire Rescue Arson investigators or tactical medics that are assigned to our SWAT team. The primary purpose of the Reserve Force is to provide additional personnel to the department during emergencies or special events which would otherwise affect the department's ability to provide proper police service. And the Reserve Force also expands available police services and increases citizen participation in department activities. To be selected as a Reserve Force officer, you go through the same hiring process as a full-time officer. Reserve Force officers, they serve at the pleasure of the Chief of Police and can be terminated at any time for non-discriminatory reasons. Part of their all Reserve Force officers mandates is they have to work a minimum of 15 hours a month of volunteer hours. They have to attend quarterly Reserve Force meetings, attend yearly in-service training, and work 6 out of the 10 designated special events during the heavy special event season, which we all know when that is, Gasparilla time. To be a Reserve Force 1, you're considered a part-time volunteer officer. We have approximately 60 of those. They must have a minimum of 4 years of full-time paid service as a police officer, deputy sheriff, or state trooper with a maximum of 4-year lapses since their last active law enforcement involvement. They must meet all pre-employment and training requirements for full-time officers as prescribed by the Department and Criminal Justice Standards and Training Commission. And once all the requirements are met, a Reserve 1 may exercise full police authority consistent with law and department rules and regulations. Reserve Force 1 officers are placed on a probationary status for a minimum of 1 year and a minimum of 288 hours of street patrol time, excluding the FTEP, the Field Training Evaluation Program. Prior to completion of the probationary period, they have to successfully complete the full-time Field Training and Evaluation Program. Unless you are a former TPD employee or officer who has previously met the requirements, they won't be placed on probation. They don't have to go back through FTO or anything like that. Reserve officers that are not former TPD officers that meet the requirements will be considered Reserve 2 officers until they have completed the additional training and are approved by the Reserve Force chain of command. For former Tampa police officers that transition into the Reserve Force, they have to, they have to complete a request to enter Reserve Force letter along with their notice of separation to their division commander and the chief of police, and they also at the same time have to send that over to the Reserve Force coordinator. If they're approved by the chief of police to go on to the Reserve Force, they have to wait, it's generally around 4 weeks until all their last regular employment paperwork and payments and stuff have been divvied out to them, and then the city will put them back into all of the employment systems and stuff as a reserve officer. Former TPD officers are classified as Reserve 1 officers. As long as they previously met the training requirements, they will not be placed on probation. Generally, if they're retired officers that just want to stay on as a reserve, they've already met all the requirements. Reserve 2s are a little bit different. They're an auxiliary volunteer police officer who successfully completed the 360-hour Florida Community College Law Enforcement Officer Program. And that program generally costs them about $2,400 to $2,500 to put themselves through. Once they go through all the other pre-employment criteria, they're selected by the chief of police of the Reserve Force. They have to complete additional training on top of the police academy type training. They have to go through 80 hours of holdover for our policies and procedures, have to go through 120 hours of the field training and evaluation program, and they have to do patrol duties with a full-time officer for 144 hours. Once all of their training requirements are met, a Reserve 2 can aid and assist a full-time or Reserve 1 officer and may exercise police authority commensurate with his training while under the direct supervision of a full-time or Reserve 1 officer. So Reserve 2 officers have to be paired up with a full-time or a Reserve 1 officer. Reserve 2s will be placed on probation for a period of 1 year from the date of being sworn in, and the minimum of 144 hours of street patrol time excluding the FTEP. Currently, we have 51 of those Reserve 2s, but keep in mind that 15 of them are in the fire department for arson investigators or attack medics. The coordinator of the reserve force is currently a master police officer that's assigned to our Special Incident Management Unit. Special Incident Management Unit is within the Special Operations Bureau and has a sergeant and a corporal that master police officer reports to. That sergeant and corporal report to a lieutenant. We have 2 lieutenants in special operations, a captain, who's myself, and then a major of our special support division. And that is a brief overview. Do you have any questions?
Captain,
Well, Mr. Tamayo.
I'm sorry. Captain, the 111 Reserve Force officers, that's Reserve Force 1 and 2?
Yes, sir.
And along with the 15 from
Yeah,
fire
if you
rescue.
take the 15 out,
And these 111 complement the approximately 1,000 uniformed full-time officers with TPD?
yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
What is the primary purpose of even having a reserve unit to assist the regular law enforcement? What's the primary purpose behind it?
I mean, it helps the police department accomplish its mission. It's not just, it provides extra officers out to patrol when they go out and ride with patrol. Helps us tremendously in our special events. As you know, the city has a lot of special events, and to staff those events at minimum impact to regular patrol operations, the reserve force really, really helps us with that. It's also helps citizens that don't want to be a full-time cop. They can go through the police academy, the shorter academy, and they can come on and make a little extra money and extra duty and get interaction with the police officers in the community, and it serves a vital role to our department.
Okay, thank you. Well, Mr. Tamayo?
Captain, what's the maximum age in which you could be a reserve officer?
There is no maximum age.
You could be 80 years old?
If you can pass the physical standards and everything,
Great.
yes.
Very good.
And
Dr.
are they
Collins?
required to be full-time, part-time hours, or it allows them to fluctuate?
Aside from the minimum volunteer hours of 15 a month, there's no, and obviously the training hours and the 188 and to that, there's no mandate, but most of them work extra duty jobs after that, or they go and they go and ride with a patrol officer to get exposure to that, because they might like working in D3, in District 3, and they might want to ride with an officer over there on times.
Okay, so as a reserve officer, they're not just stationary to a particular district, they're just in the reserve program?
They're in the reserve
where they
force,
can-
yeah.
They
Yep.
kind of go where it's needed.
Yeah, we encourage them to get exposure throughout the department.
Okay.
I got a question.
Well, Colonel Reyes?
So in the military, you have the active component, and you have reservists, and you have the National Guard. And in all of the services, there's different cultures and different attitudes, and a pecking order, starting from the active components, then to the reserves, and then to the National Guard. My question to you, just from your perspective, do you experience any kind of, or a similar type of service culture within your own ranks, from your full-timers to your reserve?
No, we all respect each other and work well together. There might be some good-natured fun when someone that might have been a sergeant retires, goes into the reserve force, and you were the rookie, and you're like, I'm higher than you. There might be some of that, but that's not.
Yeah, other than the locker room talk and the team jabbing?
No.
Otherwise, you want
They're respected. They can function just like a normal police officer. They help us tremendously, and there's no ill-natured thought about a reserve officer or anything within our department. No.
Good, thank you.
Let me just mention before I cut off, I think there's been a reserve officer on the hearing panel every time I have actually gone, and the relationship is just actually exciting. And it's good to have that individual there because it might have been an individual that was on the street and interacting with the new hires. It's been real positive.
Yeah,
And
it's
I
really
just
good.
wanted to compliment.
It's a
that.
very good program.
Captain, how do we compare with other cities? Our population here in Tampa is slightly over 400,000, so including the reserve officers, it's a ratio of slightly less than 400 to 1. How do we compare with other cities?
I don't know that
Do we have an
information.
idea? Is there talk about increasing the number of not only reserve officers, but full-time?
I know, we have an active recruiting plan in place to expand our reserve force. I can speak to that because it's within our bureau, and when it came over to our bureau, that's one thing we wanted to do was expand the reserve force. So we would love to get that expanded. We're not gonna turn down, the more cops we have, the better it'll help us throughout patrol divisions, extra duty requests, parades, everything.
What kind of expansion would you like?
I would like to see it doubled, personally. To the reserve force itself, I would love to see it doubled. Is that realistic right now? That could take 5 years or more. But that's one of our goals. And the reserve force coordinator that's in there right now, he has, between the departments he's worked for, probably 30 years experience. He's very passionate about the reserve force. He wants to make it better, and he wants to make them feel part of the team, part of the bigger team, and he wants to expand that and do some recruiting to try and get more individuals involved in it.
Okay. Carlos Valdez.
I just want to say a comment. I mean, I really do appreciate anyone that's part of the reserve program, especially those that are exiting or retiring the force and then going back to give back and continue being part of the work that you all are doing. And more so coaching and mentoring those young ones that are coming into the force means a lot to me and to the community. And then anybody that's watching that may be interested, please feel free to reach out to the department so that either A, you can get involved, or even as simple as attending the Citizen Academy, which is a shorter version of, I'm pretty sure, of all the training that you guys do. But it gives you a different perspective. So I really appreciate the programming that you guys are putting on to engage the community and keep that aspect going.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Captain Jason DeLaja, for fulfilling the request in reference to educating us on the reserve program. We appreciate it. Thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you, sir. Hope you all have a good night.
Moving on to item 10, CRB staff reports and business. Captain Messmer.
Yes, sir, we don't have any additional reports tonight.
Assistant City Attorney Kamaria Pettis-Michael.
No, I don't have anything. I'll just address the announcements and the new business.
Okay. And Mike Schmidt. Is anything, any of the board members like to address anything in reference to the CRB staff reports and business?
I have two things.
Mr. Valdez.
The first thing I would like to address is more so a comment that was made during the City Council meeting 11/1, November 1st, during public comment, when they were discussing the subpoena powers and whatnot that day. There was a comment made by the Vice President of the Police Union, Mr. Brandon Barclay, indicating that I myself had numerous conversation with Mr. Shaw, which spoke to us not too long ago in one of our meetings, which indicated we were trying, or I was trying to push this agenda. I just want to clarify that myself and let you all know that I only had one meeting with Mr. Shaw, which was for 30 minutes to get educated more so on the whole subpoena power term and what that meant for the community and for us. But at no given time, I met with him numerous times to push an agenda. And it's unfortunate that something of that nature would be communicated, which is misleading and fictitious to tell a narrative. And it's kind of bothered about that. And then the second thing is that I would like a little bit more clarification on the November 1st meeting. So there was there's a meeting on July 28th after we did our recommendation and we voted to get the subpoena powers on the ballot. On July 28th, Councilwoman Hurtak made a motion for legal to come back with an ordinance, which is drafted language, to put the CRB subpoena power and independent counsel on the ballot for voters to decide. On the meeting of 11/1, there was an agenda item which said that the special call meeting would also reflect city attorney to come back with language regarding the independent counsel and subpoena powers. So there was a vote that was taken on July 28th, which was voted by council and passed, and then there was another vote taken on November 1st. Can we get some clarity as to how we got to where we got to and why that process was that way?
Kamaria Pettis-Malcolm from the City Attorney's Office. Mr. Valdez, what I can tell you, and I don't have the chronology of the motions, but the motion for the board to receive subpoena powers did not pass, and that is not before City Council anymore. What is before City Council is whether or not it's for first reading on Thursday, December 1st, is for the board to have an independent counsel. That's scheduled for first reading, and it's still up for a vote on Thursday. But the vote regarding the topic regarding subpoena powers, that vote did not pass, and that's why it's no longer pending before City Council.
Agreed, but on July 28th, Councilwoman made a motion. And
I can go back and watch the City Council hearings to give you more details on how City Council got to where they were, but the end result is that the final vote regarding that topic for subpoena powers did not pass.
Agreed. If I can have more clarity, I don't know if some of the board members feel the same way, but they had voted on the issue and then they voted again and they like dismissed the whole agenda item where city attorney, legal department was gonna come back and share language with the council. So I'm just confused as to how that process went.
Sure. I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kamaria Pettis-Malcolm. And thank you for sharing, Carlos Valdez as well.
Bonnie, is there a status on a response, which is optional from the interim state attorney in response to the letter? And I don't know if we got the letter because I'm so far behind on emails.
Kamaria Pettis-Malcolm from the City Attorney's Office. There's not been a response from the State Attorney's Office regarding the invitation.
Okay. State attorney. That's the state attorney, correct? The state attorney.
There's not been a response from the State Attorney's Office.
Okay, you said city, I wanted to make sure it was the state attorney. Okay.
As of yet.
Did we see that?
Continue with the agenda. Next on the agenda is item 11. Any items continued? I don't believe there's any. We'll continue with item 12. Announcements for.
Mr. Chair, the next meeting.
It is wrong. Yeah, the date is wrong. The year is wrong.
Right. But also, is it at Middleton High School, Cyrus Green Park, or Reagan Park?
No, those are two different items for discussion. I always announce when the next meeting is. But the first item, the board originally approved a motion, and I apologize, I left the folder on my desk, for the
See, Black Andrews.
yes, that facility is no longer available. So I reached back out to Councilman Goods and his legislative aide to get some other options for the community-wide meeting to be held in the District 5 area.
So those are the options.
Those are the proposed options. So at this time, if the board if I could just have a motion regarding which location the board would prefer for the meeting to take place based on the suggested locations that were provided by Councilman Goods.
I just wanted to ask one question on this, see Black Andrews, that site is not available on the date that we want it?
It's not available, period.
Okay. I don't want to go to Middleton.
city don't.
So
No, it's
there's
just-
three
just the
locations,
Milwaukee.
there's three option locations. It's Middleton High School at 4801 North 22nd Street. There's also Cyrus Green Park on 2101 on the east Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. And there's also Reagan Park, 1200 East Lake Avenue. I don't know if you all are familiar with the areas, but all those three locations are within the District 5. Any one of those locations
If we
will
had to-
be audio and video accessible, to my knowledge.
If
I
we
believe
had-
Middleton High School will be the largest facility.
I think for
Reagan's-
Middleton High School, my only thought there was it would be cool if we can promote it at the high school and have kids attend, so they can see what, you know, what something like this of this magnitude looks like. That would be my only thought, you know, doing it there. Obviously, we'll have to, if it's allowed with the school, we can work with the principal and whatnot.
Any other suggestions?
I was about to say Reagan, but it doesn't matter, wherever we decide, I'll go.
Any other suggestions? Chair is open to a motion in reference to a location to be selected.
I was trying to, you're thinking of the students, and I'm thinking of perhaps where there may be community and houses where you might draw some people from the community, and that's why I said not Middleton. because-
Sure.
But whatever we
Is
decide.
there anything in particular with regards to Cyrus Park and Reagan Park that is affiliated with an organization that you're
nothing.
thinking about?
No, because those are all, the city recreation departments, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
And
okay.
I just, Reagan, they have a lot of activities there, it's right off of Dr. Martin Luther King as well. The parking is a little better than at Middleton. The parking is there, then you gotta walk all the way to the gym or wherever. Reagan, you park and just go right into the center. I can't remember, Cyrus Green is where the pool used to
I'm
be?
not, I can't speak regarding any of these
Yeah,
facilities.
Cyrus Green is right
Yes,
across
Bel-
from.
Belma Height,
Right by Belmont.
Belma
Yeah,
Height.
right back from Belton Height Little League, right
Baseball.
off of 22nd and Dr. Martin Luther King.
Yes.
Out of all of them, Reagan seems best to me if we can't go to see Black, but I'm willing to go wherever the board wants to go.
So I'll make a motion to have the meeting at Middleton.
I second it.
There's a motion on the floor by Carlos Valdez in reference to having the District 5 meeting at the Middleton High School. Colonel Reyes has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? We'll now continue with the vote. All those in favor, please show by raise of hand. Any opposed, please show by raise of hand. The motion passes. And let City Councilman Orlando Goose know that we selected Middleton High School as a location for District 5.
Yes, sir.
And to concur with Valdez's statement, if we can get notification to that school prior and maybe some type of intercom notification to the children or parents there that would like to just sit in on that type of meeting, that'd be a great educational tool for that area as well.
I would also recommend if we get our flyers that we get them to the alumni group at Middleton, which might bring more involvement and community involvement, broad-based, than even from the students.
I'll tackle that piece. I'll work with the school and make sure I communicate with the principal there.
Next meeting will be held January 24, 2025, here at Old City Hall.
2023.
20.
You were a man before your time.
Okay.
Don't rush things.
Okay. Next meeting will be held January 24th, 2023, here at 6 o'clock at Old City Hall. For whatever reason, any members are unable to attend, please notify our city clerk, Tiny Wilcox, at least 48 hours in advance so we can ensure a voting forum. Before I adjourn this meeting, I'd like to give any of our board members the opportunity to add any final comments or statements at this time.
Just on the 24th, I won't be available. Is virtual an option?
Yeah.
No?
Only thing I would say is since we would not be meeting again before all of the holidays, Happy holidays to our viewing audience, happy holidays to staff, and happy holidays to the board members.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This meeting is adjourned.
You gonna be out of town?
Yeah.